Hi everyone, welcome to Express Sports Podcast. You're listening to Game Time with me, Mihir Vasavda.
And me, Amit Kamath.
And on the menu for us today is a continental spread. It's something that we don't dig into very often. In fact, it's very rare. I can't remember कि last time हमने कब European football पे एक पूरा episode किया था. It's been ages. But it has been such an unusual football season, right? I mean, we had this very, very long break in between for the World Cup. Then, across leagues in Europe, we saw underdogs having their moment under the sun. And, well, in this underdogs list, I would also include Barcelona because of the kind of mess they were in. That was the only underdog that managed to win the title, where the rest, Arsenal, Borussia Dortmund, everyone else faltered towards the
Napoli,
end.
man.
And Sandip G
forget
doesn't
Napoli.
even wait for me to introduce him. So that is the person who you read a lot, but you'll also hear him on football today, Sandip G, who reminds me that Napoli is an underdog along with Barcelona that ended up winning the title. A great story there as well. तो संदीप जी, सिंस आप ऑलरेडी आ ही चुके हो तो शुरुआत आपसे करते हैं.
हाँ जी.
I mean, while we were discussing this thing on our WhatsApp, वहीं पर डिबेट एक स्टार्ट हो गई थी because I said that let's compare this Manchester City class of 23 to Barcelona of 2011, and you were prompt to issue a rebuttal saying that Barcelona of 2008 was much better. So, for not having a major argument on this episode, let's just say Barcelona of 2008 to 2011 to Manchester City of 2023. How would you compare and rate? I mean, Manchester City also challenged their go for their treble tonight. They play the Champions League final. So can they kind of, surpass the great Barcelona side of that era if they win tonight?
It's difficult to say, man. Whether I think Barcelona are more or less clear winners on that regard. Because not just because they won much more than City did, but because of that the perfection of their team and the philosophy they embodied. I mean, the purity of that philosophy was the radical philosophy that was there in football that changed football 4 or 5 years. I mean, all the talk was about tiki-taka, the passing style. I mean, after total football, I think that was the greatest philosophical movement in football, which radicalized, revolutionized football. And whatever happened in the next few years were all anti-tiki-taka structure.
I mean, going into this, it was Mourinho, right? It was Mourinho, and I never agree with whoever says Mourinho had the park the bus philosophy, but it was Mourinho's style at that moment. Heading into 2008 when Guardiola started this whole revolution at Barcelona.
No. What I was saying was after that. I mean, for the next 3-4 years, everything in football was a response or a reaction towards tiki-taka. There were means to counter tiki-taka. There were means to refine it. There were means to go into finer details of it. I mean, I was implying that. I mean, that no other football philosophy since total football had that much of an impact in football in terms of its theory and practice. So, in terms of that, I think Barcelona of 2008 to 11 embodied something more significant than this Manchester City side.
Yeah, and also they did it without all the petrodollars. If we were to just ignite, थोड़ा सा अगर petrol छिड़कना है on the fire that's already lit. But Amit Kamath is sitting next to me, and Amit, I believe you are an Arsenal fan, and
Guilty as charged, I guess.
and towards the end of March, I think was when we discussed कि यार एक Arsenal पे episode करना चाहिए, and you had very calmly, I think, suggested कि let's wait till the end of April because things might look very different. But it is also great to have Arsenal back in top two. But I mean, this is something that I think both of you can weigh in with. I mean, first Amit and then you, Sandeep, that with the kind of money that has been pumped into football at Manchester City. We are hearing all kinds of allegations of how they've kind of skirted the game's laws to kind of enhance their side. We're seeing a very small scale version of that in India as well, with Manchester City's one of the clubs from the City football group, Mumbai City. They're also having a similar spell of dominance in India. And we can only imagine कि कितना times multiply हुआ रहेगा in England. So Amit, if you are a supporter of any other club right now, first Arsenal and then we go to Sandeep G's Manchester United, how do you guys kind of, how does any club actually tackle this? I mean, there was tactical response to tiki-taka from 2008 to 2011. But how do you kind of have a financial response to what City is doing right now?
I think so. I've been to Borussia Dortmund, right? I've been to Dortmund, and what they offer and what we've seen from them this season is something of an antithesis to a club's spending and overspending for players. See, Borussia Dortmund is a club that, see, if you look at the last time they won the title, there was some 10, 11 years ago. Since then to now, they've pretty much lost every player you can imagine. Like Lewandowski is gone. All of their top stars who took them to the title were taken over by Bayern Munich. The way they emerged out of that was finding better talents. They found Haaland, they found Jadon Sancho. So I think that is the way. If there is one side you have teams buying your superstars, you build new ones. I mean, I know it's a long strategy. I know it's a very idealistic sounding strategy that may or may not work. But we have to realize that Arsenal never, that was one of the philosophies that a lot of fans came towards Arsenal, because the philosophy was they don't buy superstars, they build them. Like the Thierry Henrys of the world, the who knew Thierry Henry? Obviously, he was a striker. The people knew that he was a decent striker, but then he blew into a full blown superstar after coming to Arsenal. A lot of other players like Robert Pires, Lundberg, all of these guys were plucked out of, I wouldn't say obscurity, but they were all plucked out of semi famous, semi superstardom, and they were properly like propelled into superstardom. I mean, I'm sure Sandeep has seen something like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, I absolutely agree with Amit, man. In the way how Arsenal built those teams back then. And Dortmund, though, I think I've always felt, I mean, their only intention seemed to be nurturing players and selling them and making a huge profit. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, like the kind of depth they were, I mean, in 1998, from, I mean, soon after they won the Champions League in 97, they started buying these expensive players. I don't remember. I mean, I read it actually, like 98, 99. They were on a major spending spree, bought some obscure talents in highly overrated talents from Italy and all those places, and they ended up being bankrupt. And then after being bankrupt, after that, these guys came and took over, and with a little bit of funding from Bayern Munich as well. That's why they're always like a little. Whenever Bayern keeps coming for a player, they always tend to sell them, because they had that long association back then also. I mean, so these guys, when they bailed them out of the trouble, ever since that became their model. Like, yeah, you will pluck somehow the greatest. I mean, some of the most unseen talents here and there, and then we'll sell them. Dembele, who they plucked for some £2 million from some obscure club and sold him to £124 million to Barcelona. I think now they've started importing coaches also. Jurgen Klopp, Tuchel.
So they're basically like a very it's a Chinese wholesale market for football, if we were to look at that. Just that they sell goods that last longer. I hope we won't get sued by anyone from China if we have listeners from China. But
yeah, you never know. You never know.
But Sandeep, I mean, it's a very convenient way to kind of put down City's achievement. I mean, what they have done the last three seasons.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, and I'll say that because I mean, if every team could win titles by pouring in money, then we've seen like the examples. Like Chelsea this season is a prime example.
£600 million or something.
I think what they spent is more than the GDP of many countries in the world. And then we go back to early 2000s and the Galacticos project that Real Madrid had. I mean, that was also, if not a spectacular failure in terms of success, it wasn't a roaring success too. I mean, the way Manchester City's project is. So it also is a testimony to, I think, Guardiola, coaching philosophy, style, whatever, that he spent a lot of players, but he got the players that suit his vision, and then to extract that thing out of him, right? I mean, we shouldn't discount that bit.
Again, spending wisely. And again, if you look at these Manchester City players, and when some of them joined, they were not famous. Some of them were not even semi-famous. For example, Bernardo Silva, Ruben Diaz was not, Aymeric Laporte was not. So even De Bruyne was not famous when he joined City. So Manchester City spending model is also completely different from for say United spending needlessly, carelessly, recklessly.
That's the fan in you.
On spending £89 million on central midfielder who's left that club, and a defender, like one season wonder defender, they spend £80 million. I mean,
forget that, spending millions on Ronaldo and then sending him to Saudi. So
yeah, that kind of indiscretion has to be kept away. Like, I mean, if you need to beat City, you need to spend more wiser than City does.
Absolutely. And that kind of, if you have to outspend or outwit City, you have to actually outwit them in the transfer market is a philosophy that Borussia Dortmund have been following. Mihir, in fact, 4 years ago, I was in Dortmund where the club CEO, Carsten Kramer, he was explaining the club's tenets, right? And he said, so one of the club's philosophy is that we focus on ourselves, focus on our football, and try and build superstars, but we don't hire them, which is obviously that something like Borussia Dortmund. The second thing that they said was slightly weird. They said, of course we are ambitious, of course we want to win, but they said, Borussia Dortmund is not obligated to win. We are not a Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich is obligated to win, and they've shown us that this season. They were obligated to win. They came out of the gates. They were trailing for until the last game of the season. And on the last day of match week 34, they literally snatched the title from Borussia Dortmund's home. In fact, the Bundesliga was so sure that Borussia Dortmund are going to win the title that the actual trophy was at Dortmund, whereas Bayern had a replica trophy with them. They posed with a replica trophy when they actually won the title.
It's a crazy season, right, Sandip? I mean, like if we were to kind of look at all the major European leagues, the quote-unquote top 4 leagues, I mean, apart from France, where PSG were again like boringly favorite to win and they won.
It is a farmers' league, no?
It is a farmers' league, genuinely. But Sandip, like the way Premier League panned out, the way La Liga panned out, it was good to see Barcelona win, Xavi getting title win more than Barcelona winning. And in Naples, right, in Napoli, I mean, we have quote-unquote Quaradona kind of having a very miraculous story over there. It's been an amazing season of European football.
Absolutely. And before that, man, like, I mean, can we just go back to the 2008-11 Barcelona, man? Yeah.
We can spend an hour talking about it and still not be done with that debate.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I always like the team, like 10-11 team that was like, but Real Madrid was super good team then, that back then. I mean, that was also a title decided in kind of the last 2 weeks kind of a thing where, I mean, I don't remember the exact numbers, but Barcelona had some 95 points and Real Madrid some 91, 90 points, that kind of a thing. And I think Mourinho was the helm, and then you got all these guys. It was a superb team. Ronaldo, I remember, was a top scorer of that league also that season.
Was it the same season where we had some 3-4 back-to-back Clásicos?
Oh yeah, that was yeah, because semi-final where Barcelona completely hammered Real Madrid. But the closest, I mean, it was actually Arsene Wenger's Arsenal that actually ran them really close. Second round or third round.
I mean, yeah. I mean, since you've mentioned Arsenal, I think it's apt to segue into Arsenal again. Amit. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the All or Nothing documentary on Prime, and I was watching that around last year, just before the World Cup. So the EPL season really hadn't kicked off, but I was looking at it, and काफी time like Arteta came across as this. I mean, for the lack of a milder term, he came across as unintentionally funny because जब भी he used to yell at his player. I mean, you could see that he's not comfortable in his English, and he was, I don't know what he was trying, but it wasn't really as a serious talks in the dressing room. Like if Arteta would yell at me, I would perhaps laugh at his face. It was something like that.
But you have to realize if you laughed at his face, he would probably bench you for the next whole month, and you probably might find yourself playing with their kitchen 11 or something.
But if I'm getting paid £1 million per
he would
month,
dock you your pay also. Like he would. I don't think you would like discount that of Arteta, right?
Yeah, well, that's another facet that came across in that documentary, because he came across as someone, again, like we mentioned, Guardiola and his vision, his style. Like Arteta, in that documentary, it came across pretty strongly how dearly he held down to his philosophy. And the kind of effort that went into drilling that ideas into Arsenal players in the previous season, the result was seen in the season that just got over. It's quite incredible how Arsenal have transformed into a solid team under him.
Absolutely. And see, I think one of the building blocks was for him to let it be known to the team that when things are going bad, he's there to take the flak. as long as the players do what he wants them to do on the pitch. If it does not come off, he will take all the blame. He's done that. He's come into the press conference and said that, I'm to be blamed. He doesn't go around telling that, this guy is responsible. But when a player is actually screwing up, like Aubameyang was, they are promptly shown the bench or then the door. I mean, that is the point of what makes Arteta. I mean, yeah, I can understand why he would come across as slightly comical when he's giving those pep talks, when he brings up random diagrams on a whiteboard and tries to explain philosophies. But I think the point is when he's explaining tactics on the pitch, that is where he's most astute rather than whatever he's saying on camera. I don't know if it is also a lot to do with what sometimes what happens is maybe people are conscious because they know they are being recorded the whole time. Maybe that also came across in the All or Nothing documentary. Maybe it's that. We don't know for sure how he's when the cameras are not on him.
But I mean, yeah, for sure, like Arsenal are moving in the right direction. Again, it comes down to whether they have that financial muscle to match City, because that seems to be the difference right now. But Sandeep, since you are a open United fan, this must be like your worst dream right now, right? I mean, your noisy neighbor, they might soon win a treble.
No, man, not actually. Like, I mean, those fans in India, I mean, fans, 21st century fans, I don't think Manchester City, I mean, is kind of the biggest rival kind of scene. Because I was talking, I mean, there are friends of mine here and there. We saw most of them Arsenal fans. So it's kind of thing, biggest rivalry for us still back then and still is Arsenal United.
Acha, I thought you'd say that. Yeah, that's what I was coming to say, that your nightmare would be that City is like looking out of your reach, and then Arsenal is also like kind of outpacing in terms of the way their resurgence ho raha hai.
But I mean, this season for United was pretty decent, man. Like, I mean, I didn't expect I'll be any doubt happy if Manchester United reached FA Cup final, finished third, and won a Carling Cup. So pretty relevant. Yeah, I mean, reasonably satisfied.
Sandeep, this reminds me of where Arsenal were a few seasons back, where finishing fourth was as good as a trophy.
FA Cup.
No, just finishing fourth was as good as a trophy. Like, we didn't have too high expectations, and we pretty much took whatever it took. Like, it doesn't matter if we played one season in the Champions League and got knocked out to the Europa League in that same season. It's fine.
Yeah.
But at least we saw Champions League. That was fine.
I mean, this Manchester City team, man, it's very difficult to dislike. I mean, it's because it's so super. Like, I mean, just watching them, I mean, you forget every rivalry, man. Especially for, like, I mean, not people from Manchester. It's for all the neutrals, it's been great, man, to watch this beautiful Manchester City team.
We had a brief podcast series a few years ago, which was done by Daksh Panwar and Gaurav Bhatt, and it was called 99.94, I think, where basically we just fantasized matchups, cricketing matchups. And I think it would be fascinating to perhaps talk about, who would win if Barcelona 2008 to 2011 versus City 2023 was indeed a fantasy match. But we won't get into that matchup right now, because the other thing, Sandeep, that is fascinating the way it's transpired this season is Italy did not qualify for the World Cup. I mean, they won the Euros, they did not qualify for the World Cup, and now you've got an Italian team that lost in the Europa League. They have another team in the Champions League final, and you have also a league winner, which was completely like out of the blue.
Absolutely. It's very unpredictable, man. But all said and done, Italian league still not captured this all glory, man. Like 2010s, I mean, it's far from that. I mean, and UA is rebuilding. AC Milan, it's very inconsistent. Inter Milan was woeful in league and somehow managed to patch a consistent run in Champions League. So it's kind of a crazy season. I mean, it actually mirrors the fortunes of Italian national team also, because, Europe, they did brilliantly. They failed to qualify World Cups. I mean, despite having great chances, despite getting soft penalties in 3 games, I mean, it's really a crazy time, man, like Italy. I mean, it's I don't know what's actually happening there.
Also worth noting that there are not many Italian players in AC Milan, Inter Milan.
No. Yeah, there's not like all the great Italian sides, man. They had the core was Italian players only. I mean, if you look at AC Milan, you had Gattuso, Maldini, Nesta, Inzaghi. or Juventus, they had Del Piero, and then after that Chiellini and Pirlo, of course, yeah. Those things are changing, man. Like, I mean,
Buffon, how do we even
Yeah,
forget
yeah.
Buffon? It's a great point, that, and I mean, I don't know how the next World Cup cycle would look for Italy, but and at club level too, it'll be interesting to see if this dominance continues. But if we just have to look at the season that has gone by and the takeaways from it, Amit, you first. We started with Manchester City. I think it's apt to also end with Manchester City. We don't know what will happen to their ongoing investigation into the financial mismanagement, and if they have actually spent more than they were permitted to, and if that leads to any sanctions. Is there a way, is there a method to kind of match teams like City? I mean, it just looks impossible to match them on field until, say, Guardiola says goodbye to the club. But is there a blueprint?
I don't think there is an immediate sure shot blueprint. I think you have to just pick the right horses and nurse them into. You can't even like pick a horse anymore. You have to pick like a. So you just have to pick a mare and have to basically nurse it to adulthood and then hope that it doesn't pick up an injury, it doesn't get lured away by somebody else.
और वो
And
दूसरों का नाइटमेयर बन जाए.
yeah, so that is probably the only way, which again I think what is now going to happen is, I don't know if the listeners have heard about this or read about this, but just earlier this week the Saudi Arabian backed fund, the state fund, they've decided to invest 75% into 4 of Saudi Arabian big clubs, including Al Nassr, which has Ronaldo, Al Ittihad, Al Hilal. So these 4 clubs are not going to have any sort of financial fair play regulations. They can spend whatever they want on clubs. So there is one hope that once those 4 clubs get really competitive, that is when Man Cities and the Real Madrids of the world will start struggling to find great talents, because all those guys are heading there because they are getting a blank checkbooks to write their names on.
Sandeep, I mean, I think we are in an era of Super League right now, and you'd written this wonderful column last weekend on the whole morality of players going to Saudi and stuff. I mean, and that was, I think, very spot on. I think I urge our listeners who haven't really read that column to go and spend 5 minutes reading it, because I mean, that is going to be the future. I mean, I don't know if Messi will end up being in Saudi, but if not Messi, there'll be 10 other players who will be lining up there. And is that the future of football? Like, I mean, of course, we'll be looking at the cities and Barcelona's and Real Madrid, and that's what we'll romanticize. But for the players, Saudi will perhaps become the next big playground.
For semi-retired players, man, semi-retired players plays in the last leg. For a player who wants to make money, yeah, maybe. But for the players who want to be remembered as a great footballer or a really giant footballer, I mean, he has to play in Europe. Maybe late 30s, post 35, on a huge pay scale, you can end up in Saudi. But I don't think otherwise, to lure younger players is always different. It's a big clubs in Europe that still continue to lure the younger players. Like that, I guess, will continue for a while. Even PSG couldn't lure the best of talents for all the wealth of money they had. I mean, they could talent the superstars, but not the real gems. I don't think City is unbeatable either. Huh? Like the City that 2017-18 City, that City was actually a much better iteration of this City. That was that City looked.
Yeah, this was full of mistakes, this City. Like, it had its loose
This
moments.
was, I think, a case of Arsenal, little bit of bottling it away in the final stretch. I mean, the mere aura of City catching up with them, then actually City winning the title. I mean, City did their best, of course, but I always felt that. I mean, it was for Arsenal. They had all the momentum, they had all impetus to win, but somehow they managed to chalk it. I mean, and which again was unpredictable because City have been relentless. But I don't think this City is unstoppable.
Well, I mean, it's always great to have good teams with flaws to win big. Somehow it just fits right. Perfection isn't really as exciting as some flaws.
As imperfection?
As imperfection. And who knows? I mean, Abu Dhabi backed City, the only real challenge would be a Saudi backed Newcastle United or a Qatar backed Manchester United. You never know. And Well, there is always a Legends Cricket League equivalent of football in Saudi Arabia, something to look forward to next season. It's actually not going to be a long off season because we'll be having the Women's World Cup kicking off in a month, in a few weeks. So that's something to look forward to. But in terms of domestic European men's football, tonight is when the curtains come down with the Champions League final. And we'll see if our dear Sandip G's very dear Manchester United's noisy neighbours will turn into the treble makers. It should be a nice match. Hope you guys have fun watching it. And I guess you guys had fun listening to this as well. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Abhishek Kumar and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.